Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick, published in 1968. I've got this SF Masterworks edition of the book here. This was adapted into the film Blade Runner by director Ridley Scott, and I do really like that film, but having just read this book, it is incredibly different. This is set in a world where most of humanity have left the planet Earth to colonize other planets in the wake of a world war referred to as World War Terminus, or WWT, which was a nuclear war that devastated the world's ecology, rendering most of the wildlife extinct and polluting the atmosphere with deadly nuclear fallout. We're following a character named Rick Deckard, who is a bounty hunter for the San Francisco Police Department. And these bounty hunters are tasked with locating androids that are illegally present on Earth, who have travelled from these other worlds, and identifying whether they are androids or humans, and then retiring them, which is effectively killing them. To determine whether someone is a human or an android, they administer a test where they present the subject with a series of prompts, which mostly relate to animals or human experiences, and then they pick up on a series of metrics that detects whether that person is exhibiting empathy. Deckard is unhappy with his life, living in an apartment with his wife, who he's not really getting along all that well with. There is this Penfield mood organ at the beginning of the book, which is a device that's used to alter your mind state with settings for happiness, hope, depression. And the primary source of Deckard's sadness comes from the fact that he doesn't own a real animal. Because all of the animals in this world have gone extinct, or most of the animals have gone extinct, it is seen as the ultimate social status symbol to own a real living animal. And because these animals are incredibly expensive to buy, feed, and care for, a few companies have become established who manufacture these robotic replicas of animals, which are extremely realistic. And Deckard owns an electric sheep, which he keeps on the roof of his apartment building. The other residents of the apartment building keep their animals up there as well, and he is jealous of his neighbour's horse and obsesses over the fact that he wants a real animal. Opportunity comes knocking for Deckard when the leading bounty hunter at the police department is hospitalised by an android that he's pursuing, which puts Deckard into that top bounty hunter position where he can finish the job that the previous one was working and earn an enormous commission from retiring the remaining androids. The group of androids that this bounty hunter was hunting down are a new variant of android referred to as the Nexus 6, who are incredibly close to humanity and are difficult to tell apart even with the devices and the methods employed by the police department. This bounty hunter managed to retire 2 of the 8 androids that had come to Earth from a Martian colony. And so Deckard sets out hunting down the remaining 6 androids to test them and retire them one by one. These testing sequences are absolutely riveting, and throughout the plot there are quite a few twists and turns that keep things really interesting. There's another element of the book as well, which is this sort of religious practice that a lot of people on Earth employ, which is referred to as mercerism. It consists of people using this dedicated device to enter in this virtual experience in which they can witness this figure called Wilbur Mercer, who is endlessly being tortured. And the individual can fuse with Mercer or with other people experiencing this virtual reality. And on top of that, there is this obsession that most of Earth's population have with a specific talk show host who is broadcasting for most of the day every single day. I saw an Outlaw bookseller video recently where he was talking about how expectation can really be the downfall of some reading experiences. Because with certain books, like Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, they are held in such high regard, and because of Blade Runner being such an important work in science fiction film, I did go into this one myself with extremely high expectations. And actually, I've got to say that even though this was a much different experience to the one that I expected, it completely met those expectations. I think the world, the characters, the concepts and ideas are masterfully executed here by Philip K. Dick. I've only read one of his books before, which was A Maze of Death, which I liked but I didn't love. The ending did flip the whole thing on its head and bring it back around for me. But there wasn't really a moment in Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep where I felt the book was lacking in any way. It's not that I go into these books looking for flaws and looking for issues, but they do jump out at you. And after I set this book down, I realised that there was absolutely nothing that I can criticise here. And so it's almost a perfect book. And I think that if I did another top 10 science fiction books that I've ever read video, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep would get in there. Tower of Glass by Robert Silverberg, published in the UK first in 1977, although the copyright for this book says 1970, so I'm not sure when it was first originally published. But this book is also about androids because it is following a billionaire named Simeon Krug, who has become obsessed by the fact that humanity have received a signal from a distant star system, somewhere around 300 light years away from Earth. And this billionaire Krug is funneling almost all of his money into this project, which is the Tower of Glass. He is erecting this 1,500 meter tall structure somewhere in the tundra in the northern hemisphere, which is completely isolated from any nearby civilization, because this structure will contain a tachyon beam, which he hopes will be able to broadcast a message at faster than light speeds to this distant star system and initiate a communication link between humanity and what he perceives to be an intelligent alien race. When this tachyon beam is activated, it will create an almost EMP-like effect, shutting down communications equipment for an enormous radius. And because it's being constructed in the tundra, the frozen ground is suitable to sustain this enormous structure, which will be the biggest monument ever created by humanity. To build this tower, Krug is employing thousands of android workers, and he is also the person who created these androids. He invented the method for creating synthetic humans in these chemical vats. And these androids, to differentiate them from humans, have bright red, waxy skin, and they come out of the vats as fully formed adults after a period of 2 years. We're following three main characters in this story, in this interwoven plot. One of them is Simeon Krug himself, as he is coordinating the construction of this tower and obsessing over the nature of these beings in this distant star system and pondering on their very simple message that's being broadcast to Earth. And then his son, Manuel Krug, who is not particularly interested in his father's endeavours. And then finally, Thor Watchman, who is the foreman responsible for the construction of the tower, who is an android. Now, these androids worship Krug as their god and refer to him as their savior or their redeemer, and they conduct these elaborate prayer rituals in chapels scattered throughout the world. This religious practice is a completely secret endeavour, and Krug himself and all of humanity do not know that the androids practice this religion. The androids themselves, though, are fractured between those that worship Krug and engage in these religious practices. And then this political party of androids who are seeking reform for the way that they are treated and owned by humans, and trying to get android members into positions within the world governments to rewrite policies and oversee the elevation of androids to a human level in society. I think that this is an extremely compelling setup, and Silverberg mostly pulls it off. This book, like many of his other books, is quite sexual in nature, and some of that in here is really uncomfortable and awkward due to the quite creepy nature that Silverberg writes it in, particularly with reference to Simeon Krug's wife and some of the female androids. And I do think that some of the religious and political allegory in here is a little bit heavy-handed. But even though some of the structural components are a little bit on the weaker side, I do think the overall construction of this novel is solid, building to a really impactful and interesting ending. If I were going to do a ranking of all the Robert Silverberg books that I've read so far, and I think that number is now 8, this would probably be on the lower side at the moment. But there are quite a few aspects of this book that I do want to think on further, because I've only just finished this one, and there are some quite thought-provoking elements to it. Definitely not the kind of perfect book that I think Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep is, but nevertheless, 2 great books about androids from 2 great writers. So have you read either of these? If you have, what do you think? Let me know in the comments. And if you haven't, has anything I've said here regarding these 2 intrigued you enough to potentially go out and read them? Thanks again for watching, liking and subscribing, and I'll see you on the next one.